Today I'm going to be learning more about Sweden by watching this video, 11 things you didn't know about Sweden, Thor, same people, Vikings and more. So yeah, I love learning about Sweden. This should be an interesting video. Thor and Vikings. I don't really know much about the Viking history of Sweden. Being Scottish, obviously we have a slight history with Vikings as well. So interested to know more about that, but just interested to learn more as always. Tell me what you think about these things. Let's watch.
I am super excited about this video. I've lived all over the world, and being Swedish, there are so many things people don't know about Sweden, but I really think you guys should know this. I always find it so funny when in American movies they mention Sweden every time they need to reference something that no one will look up. Because the truth is that Sweden wasn't really covered in media up until the last few years, and some of these things I'll share today I've just realized from living in other countries and working with Americans and people from all over the world. So from Thor and his hammer to allemansrätten to how to eat cinnamon rolls, I'll share some things with you that I bet you didn't know about Sweden before. Number one is that we actually learn about Thor and his hammer in school. The Vikings and the people of Scandinavia used to believe in what was called the Ace of Gods. So that is the gods like Odin and Thor. So this is actually part of millions of people's history and heritage. So it's crazy to me that some Disney movie is just making this into a sci-fi thing that is not even loosely based on the reality. So when I was in middle school, we were taught about Midgard, where the Ace of Gods live, and we were taught about the different gods. Even my own name Saga comes from this Nordic belief in the Ace of Gods, and Saga was one of the goddesses that unfortunately they don't know so much about, but there are other great gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya that are much more popular. The reason Swedish people don't believe in the Ace of Gods anymore is because the Christian missionaries came from all over Europe to sort of school Sweden in Christianity. We were actually one of the last countries to become fully Christian, but once the kings and the different kingdoms have converted into Christianity, the faith in the Ace of Gods actually was forbidden and it died out. If you want to read a fantastic book and learn more about Vikings, I recommend the book called Red Snake, which is written in Swedish, but it has an English translation, and it is one of my top books, so I highly recommend you try that. The second thing that most...
Okay man, yeah, I might need to check that out. I definitely want to learn more about the Viking history in Sweden. Tell me what you know about it as well. But with regards to like the Swedish mythology, learning about that in school, I had no idea that would have been something you learned about. I guess it makes sense. I get, being from Scotland, we don't have so much mythology history, so we don't learn about it. We learn more about relatively recent modern history when it comes to the UK, like the wars and things like that. This seems a lot more fun. Guess you could maybe compare it to like Greek mythology, but tell me what you learned about it. Was it very fun to learn about that part of Swedish history? It's very unique. And what sort of like percentage split do you learn about Swedish history and international history in school? Is it mostly Swedish? Is it mostly international? And yeah, how do you feel about Thor being like this famous character that probably most people in the world only know him from like Marvel movies for such an important part of Swedish history? How does that feel to see him on screen? Yeah, tell me more about that.
Most people don't know about Sweden, and that Swedish people might not even know about, is about the book and the film The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This movie is based on a Swedish book, but it's actually not called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It's called something much more controversial, and it's called Men That Hate Women. For many obvious reasons, one could assume that this title might not be a hit in Hollywood or even America. You can tell a lot about the difference in our cultures, even how they translated it. The word girl instead of woman, and dragon tattoo to make this a story about a girl with a dragon tattoo instead of men who hate women is just a very interesting perspective and a very interesting and fun fact, I think, about the differences in our cultures. Number three,
yeah, tell me more about that. I don't think I've actually ever seen that movie, or I don't know the story as well. I do know it was a pretty popular movie when it came out. Tell me more about it. What other good Swedish literature is there that you would recommend people from outside of the country learn about or read or enjoy?
I don't think many people know about Sweden, especially not here in New Zealand where I live, is that we also have indigenous people. Believe it or not, Sweden is a large country, and traveling from the north to the south takes a long time. So this is why, although we have indigenous people, they're not present in the entire country. The indigenous people are called Sami people, and they exist in parts of Finland, Norway, Russia, and Sweden. My mom was Norwegian, and growing up, she would tell stories about our Sami heritage and about this mysterious man who would heal people. Unfortunately, my mother didn't tell me more about our Sami heritage, so I know very little about it, and I know my grandmother comes from a very broken background, but the Sami people have a very great presence in the north of Sweden still to this day. The Sami people used to move freely in the north of Scandinavia and Russia. However, Sweden have a dark history of forcefully moving the Sami people from north of Sweden to other parts of Sweden, putting them in Swedish school, forcing them to speak Swedish, and etc. So there was very much a colonization of the indigenous people of Scandinavia. Now there has been written a fantastic book on the topic. On these, I'm not sure what you would call it in Swedish, but the forced moving of these people. And it's a fantastic book. I'll link it in the descriptions down below. And I think you should definitely read it if you're interested in learning more about the indigenous people of Scandinavia. Number 4 is...
Yeah, tell me what you think about that. What do you think about the treatment of the Sami people? I see parallels to things I've learned about Canada, Australia, and what happened to the indigenous people of those countries as well. I don't know much about the Sami people. I've seen it referenced in the movie Klaus. It's like a Christmas movie on Netflix. Tell me if you've seen that one. And there's like some Sami characters in that movie as well. But tell me how they're treated today. What do you think about that part of Swedish history or that part of Swedish culture?
Is that we don't have paid schools. This is a little bit confusing if you're from another country, but we do actually have private schools and public schools. However, majority of our schools are public and all of our schools are free to attend. So no Swedish people has to pay to go to school in Sweden.
That's the same as Scotland,
Number
actually.
5 is that we have 480 days of paid parental leave per child. So each parent gets 90 days that they have to take out. If they don't take these days out, the 90 days, they will disappear. The restoring 300 days can be divided, so each parent can be home with the child for as many days as they'd like in that period of time. This means that most dads in Sweden do take parental leave, albeit fewer days than women, unfortunately, but this is still something I think that is evolving. I remember being home with my dad and my brother whilst he was building on the house or whilst he was making apple jam, and it was just a very, very fun time that I think of fondly to this day. Number 6.
Yeah, tell me, if you are a man, how long did you take for your parental leave? I think it's so important to have both parents to have as much impact or as much time with your child as possible. Like, I've got 2 children. I love spending time with them. I think it's like beneficial for their life to have the influence from both parents there as much as possible. And the fact that like Sweden gives that much like parental leave, paternity and maternity, I think it's just a fantastic thing. How do you feel about it?
And this is something I didn't realize until I moved to Japan and my American/Swedish friend told me, and that is that it's not common for everyone to be in the news. But in Sweden, pretty much everyone has been in the news. So we're a big country, but we're not that many people, and we have Sweden, pretty much everyone has been in the news. So we're a big country, but we're not that many people, and we have a lot of local newspapers, which means most people have actually been in the local newspapers. I've been in the newspaper, I think at least 3 times. I'll see if I can find some clips and put them here on the screen. My mom's been in the newspaper several times, and so has my dad. So pretty much everyone I know has been in the newspaper. So if you know someone Swedish, you should definitely ask them if they've been in the newspaper.
Tell me when you were in the newspaper, if you were.
We have lots of different dialects. As I said before, we're a very large country, which means there are very large distances between different communities. That has created very different dialects in Sweden, and most people actually don't know that we have lots of different dialects. For example, I'm from the south of Sweden, so I pronounce the letter R, so with a very harsh sound that can be very difficult to immigrants to learn. If you're from the north of Sweden, you probably have a rolling R. My mother, who was from Norway, had a rolling R, and she would pronounce it R. So that's sort of an example on how different accents can be. When my grandparents and my parents grew up, my southern accent used to actually have subtitles on the TV for other Swedish people to understand.
Oh,
so
really?
I grew up in the southernmost parts of Sweden on a farm, and I speak something called skånska. Number 8 is that we saw...
Yeah, tell me what you think about that. Tell me the stereotypes of the different Swedish dialects. What do you think is the most enjoyable to listen to? What's the funniest? Tell me anything interesting about the different dialects. What's your dialect and how do you think people view that from other parts of Sweden?
celebrate Midsummer, but it's nothing like the movies. The movies have done it again. They make people think that Sweden are just a bunch of crazy people. But we do in fact celebrate Midsummer. We do jump around a maypole that we dress in flowers, and we do sing songs, and a lot of people drink a lot of alcohol. But personally, I love Midsummer because it is a beautiful time of year in Sweden when the sun doesn't really go down, and we celebrate it with lots of flowers and delicious food, and I loved dancing around the maypole as a child and dressing it in flowers. So if you ever go to Sweden, I highly suggest to try celebrating Midsummer because it is super, super fun. Number 9 is that university is free, and we also get paid to go to university. One might describe it more as an allowance, but yes, we do get money to go to university. For about 6 years of full-time study, you can get 3,300 Swedish kroner a month, which is approximately $320 US. Since tuition is free, this is to help you pay for books and materials and anything else you might need.
That's awesome.
There is also a loan you can get in case you want to rent, but Swedish students need to be careful with how much they work to get this allowance. When I went to university, I worked a lot, which meant that I earned more money than the average student. However, there's a threshold where you then have to pay money back to the government. So make sure you don't work too much to get your full allowance. Number 10, this is something I didn't realize that was weird about my upbringing until last year, and that was that I slept outside my entire childhood.
I've heard that
honestly
before
had
for
no idea that not
Scandinavian
everyone
countries,
did this.
actually.
I mean, I did grow up on a farm, but people also do it in the cities, especially if you're at a cafe or something. You put your baby in the stroller and they will sleep outside. I slept outside, my brother slept outside, my sister slept outside for our daytime naps all throughout the year, winter and summer. It's quite convenient because the baby doesn't get woken up, but one also has to remember that in Sweden we don't have any predators. So I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, but there were no animals or predators that could get to me, so I was very safe. Maybe a little bit cold, but I was very safe and healthy. Number 11.
Yeah, that one definitely doesn't happen in many other countries. I live in Malaysia, it's just not possible. The temperature is too hot, too humid. It's just too noisy as well. There's just no good conditions for children to sleep outside. Yeah, tell me if you put your child outside, did you sleep outside? I think it's quite awesome, actually.
It's allemansrätten. Before moving to New Zealand, I'd never seen a trespassing sign, or any sign for that matter, on private land. We have something called allemansrätten, which means that everyone is allowed to be pretty much everywhere, not in people's private gardens, but if someone owns a forest, anyone can go there as long as they don't break branches or destroy anything. And this is called allemansrätten. So if you're in Sweden, you won't see any private property or trespassing signs, which is very common in a country like New Zealand. And the last thing that I have to tell everyone about, because the world is doing it wrong, and that is how you should eat your cinnamon rolls. In Sweden, we love cinnamon rolls. We even have a day for it, kanelbullsdagen, where we celebrate the cinnamon rolls and we eat lots of them. And the thing is, you're not supposed to put glaze on top of your cinnamon rolls. Now this is so important. When living in France, I once had a cinnamon roll and I was so excited because I hadn't had one in like 2 years. And to my disappointment, it came out covered in like some syrupy glaze. In Sweden, we do not put any glaze on our cinnamon rolls. Instead, we put something called pearl sugar on it. Pearl sugar is exactly what it sounds like. It's little pieces of sugar and they go on top of the cinnamon roll, and it makes it a little bit crunchy and a little extra sweet. And it's so much better. So if you make cinnamon rolls at home, try it the Swedish way, because I promise it'll be better. And it won't be gooey or messy or anything in the pot. Very, very strange. Stop eating cinnamon buns with glaze on them and start eating them the Swedish way. I really hope you guys liked this video. I didn't used to care much about being Swedish, but moving abroad, I realized that our culture is quite different. And
yeah, that was an interesting video. I never knew that about cinnamon rolls. I love a cinnamon roll. I do actually like it with like that sugar glaze on it. I get here in Malaysia, they only have like Cinnabon. So we don't really have much choice apart from it having stuff on top of it. But I've never seen that. I would have just thought that was like little seeds on top of it, but little sugar seed things, sugar pearls. Great idea. Tell me what you think about that. Is that the best way to eat a cinnamon roll? Excellent facts. Like Sweden's such an interesting country. Just a great place to live, clearly, going from this video. Tell me what you think about these. Thanks.